Myatka, Burma. August 1944. Following the liberation of Matkina on August 10, 1944, after a 78-day siege, American forces made a discovery that would produce the first detailed documentation of Japan's comfort women system. 20 Korean women and 2 Japanese civilian comfort station operators had been captured. The U.S. Office of War Information's Psychological Warfare unit conducted interrogations that would become Japanese. Prisoner of War Interrogation Report. Number 49, the first official American documentation of what would later be recognized as one of the largest systems of sexual slavery in modern history. The women told interrogators they had been recruited in Korea in 1942 with promises of factory work in Singapore. Instead, they had been transported via Rangoon to the Burmese frontier as part of a larger group where they were forced into sexual slavery. The report, first declassified in 1973, documented living conditions, operational procedures, and the systematic nature of what the Japanese military euphemistically called comfort stations, what American forces were discovering across the Pacific challenged comprehension. Historian Yoshimi Yoshiaki would later document nearly 2,000 comfort stations spanning from China to the Dutch East Indies, with approximately 200,000 women enslaved, from the jungles of Burma to the ruins of Manila, from the mountains of China to the islands of the Dutch East Indies. Allied forces were encountering women who had survived systematic sexual slavery on an industrial scale. On September 7, 1944, less than a month after Matkina, another crucial piece of documentation emerged at Shan in China's Yunnan province, U.S. China. Allied forces liberated Korean comfort women during their assault on Japanese positions. Private Charles Hatfield of the U.S. Army's 164th Signal Photo Company captured what would become one of the most important photographs documenting comfort women liberation. The image showed 4 Korean women, one visibly pregnant, being led to safety by Chinese soldiers. Sergeant Edward Fay captured motion picture footage of the same liberation. These images, now housed in the U.S. National Archives, provided visual evidence that would prove crucial decades later. The pregnant woman in the photograph would eventually be identified as Park Young-sim, though it would be 56 years, before she could publicly testify about her experience at the Women's International War Crimes Tribunal in Tokyo in 2000. According to military records of the original 24 comfort women at Shan, only 10 survived to liberation, had been killed during the bombardments preceding the Allied assault. The Allied Translator and Interpreter Section, ATIS, established September 19, 1942 under Colonel Sidney F. Masher's command, became the primary intelligence unit documenting the comfort women system. By 1945, ATIS had grown to nearly 4,000 personnel, mostly Nisi Japanese Americans, processing thousands of captured documents that revealed the bureaucratic machinery of sexual slavery. A TIS research report number 120, Amenities in the Japanese Armed Forces, submitted directly to General MacArthur, provided the most comprehensive Allied documentation of the system. The report's November 15, 1945 edition, expanded to 42 pages from February's 22, included captured Japanese military regulations as annexes. These documents archived in U.S. National Archives record groups 165, 331, 407, and 554. Initially classified comfort stations under amusements brothel rather than war crimes, reflecting contemporary understanding that would take decades to correct. The captured regulations revealed standardized procedures across the Pacific. The WWII Comfort Station Regulations from Nanjing, dated March 6, 1939, detailed medical examination schedules, fee structures differentiated by military rank, operating hours, and mandatory condom requirements. Mandalay Garrison Headquarters had issued 30 items of detailed regulations, officially listing women as licensed prostitutes, while maintaining strict military oversight. Military transport documents showed Army cargo ships transported comfort women from Japan and Korea requiring specific Ministry of War permission. Railway transportation orders showed women moved in freight cars marked as military supplies. Every movement required multiple approvals. Forms in triplicate and official seals, bureaucratic evidence that survived even when other records were destroyed. The language used in these documents systematically obscured reality. Special service personnel meant sex slaves. Comfort facilities meant rape stations. Medical treatment often meant forced abortion. Amenities classified systematic rape ace entertainment. This linguistic sanitization would affect how comfort women were perceived and treated during liberation, with many falling through bureaucratic categories. Neither prisoners of war, civilian internees, nor military personnel. The liberation of the Philippines from October 1944 to July 1945 exposed the most extensive network of comfort stations American forces would encounter. When the U.S. 1st Cavalry Division entered Manila on February 3, 1945, racing to liberate Stumbard Thomas University, where 3,785 Allied civilian internees were held, they passed through districts where comfort stations had operated for 3 years. Supreme Commander for the Allied Powers SCAP records would later document 12 comfort stations and 5 brothel in Manila alone. Additional stations were discovered across the archipelago. Bayanbong in North Luzon, Masbate in Central Visayas, Iloilo on Panay Island with 2 stations housing 12 to 16 and 10 to 11 women respectively. Cebu, Tacloan on Lee with 9 Filipino women, Bawan on Lee, Butan on Mindanao with 3 Filipino women, Cagayan on Mindanao with 3 stations total, and Davao on Mindanao with mixed nationality comfort women. The 37th Infantry Division engaged in fierce urban combat throughout Manila during the month-long Battle of Manila that lasted until March 3, 1945. The 148th Infantry Regiment liberated the Philippine General Hospital and University of the Philippines on February 17, 1945, freeing 7,000 civilians. During these operations, American forces systematically discovered comfort stations in the Malati, Binondo, and Quiapo districts. Financial records captured at Japanese 14th Area Army Headquarters revealed the economic exploitation underlying the system. Women were charged for food, clothing, and medical treatment with costs exceeding their earnings, creating debt bondage. Military paymasters handled all transactions with women never receiving actual currency. Payment vouchers showed soldiers charged based on rank, 2 yen for privates, 3 yen for NCOs, with officers receiving special arrangements. Among those liberated in the Philippines was Maria Rosa L. Henson, born December 5, 1927, though her rescue came earlier through Filipino guerrillas working with American forces. In February 1942, at age 14, she had been first assaulted by Japanese soldiers. In April 1943, she was forced into comfort woman service for 9 months. Filipino guerrillas saved her in January 1944 as American forces were preparing for their turn to the Philippines. Henson would become the first Philippine woman to speak publicly about her experience in 1992, breaking nearly 50 years of silence. She would later become one of the first recipients of the Asian Women's Fund Project in 1996. Her testimony provided crucial documentation of how comfort stations operated in the Philippines and the involvement of local guerrilla forces in liberation operations. Nothing prepared American forces for what they would find on Okinawa when the invasion began on April 1, 1945. Intelligence had suggested several comfort stations might be present. Their reality exceeded comprehension. Over 145 stations across an island only 70 mi long, according to historical documentation. During the Okinawa campaign, which involved the 1st and 6th Marine Divisions, among others, comfort stations were discovered in every major town and military installation. Naha alone contained 17 former comfort stations. According to military intelligence reports, the women found included Koreans, Taiwanese, and Okinawans with ages documented as ranging from as young as 14 years old. The rapid Japanese collapse in certain sectors led to unexpected discoveries. Near Shuri, the ancient capital, Marines, from the 1st Division discovered cave complexes where Japanese forces had hidden Korean comfort women. According to military reports, these women had been told that Americans would torture and eat them, propaganda that the Japanese used to encourage suicide rather than capture. Some had been given hand grenades and instructed to kill themselves rather than be captured. The scale of documentation required on Okinawa overwhelmed available translators. By May 1945, ATIS had deployed 3 full translation teams to the island, processing thousands of documents related to comfort station operations. The bureaucratic detail was extensive. Duty rosters showing women forced to service 30 to 40 men per day during peak periods. Medical records documenting forced abortions and sterilizations. Payment ledgers showing the military's financial control over every aspect of the system. The Military Intelligence Service MIS, composed primarily of Nisei Japanese Americans, played a crucial role in documenting comfort women discoveries. Mariel's Marauders, 5th 307 Composite Unit Provisional, commanded by Brigadier General Frank D. Merrill, had operated behind Japanese lines in Burma throughout 1944 with 14 Japanese-American MIS translators crucial for interrogating captured comfort station personnel. After Merrill's Marauders disbanded on August 10, 1944, the Mars Task Force under Brigadier General John P. Willey succeeded them. This unit included the 475th Infantry Regiment and 124th Cavalry Regiment, each with teams of 12 Nisei language specialists who continued liberation operations in northern Burma. These translators faced unprecedented challenges. The women spoke Korean, Chinese, Tagalog, Indonesian, Dutch, and various regional dialects. Many Korean women had been forbidden to speak their native language for so long they struggled to communicate even with Korean-speaking translators. Cultural barriers made discussion of sexual trauma nearly impossible, with many women refusing to speak to male translators. The translators processed documents that revealed the system's racial hierarchy. Korean women were classified as Class A, Chinese as Class B, and Southeast Asian women as Class C. Different stations served different ranks. Officer-only stations had fewer women who faced even more extreme abuse. The documentation revealed rape industrialized according to military rank and racial prejudice. The liberation of the Dutch East Indies coinciding with Japan's surrender on August 15, 1945 revealed another dimension, the enslavement of European women. Among them was Jan Ruff O'Harn, born in Java in 1923, who had been forced into a brothel in 1944. At age 21, O'Harn had been taken from Amberau internment camp with 9 other Dutch women in February 1944. They had been held at a comfort station in Serang for 4 months before being transferred to a camp at Batavia, where they were liberated on August 15, 1945. She would break decades of silence with her 1994 memoir, 50 Years of Silence, and testified at a U.S. congressional hearing in 2007, providing detailed accounts of the systematic nature of Japanese military sexual slavery. British and Australian forces taking control from the Japanese documented the discovery of comfort stations throughout Java. Australian naval personnel would specifically be involved in repatriating Indonesian comfort women from Labuan, Borneo. The Bogor camp in West Java was established exclusively for women, forced into military brothel while Batavia camps processed 2,500 women and children in post-liberation operations. The Dutch military authorities, returning to reclaim their colony, initially suppressed information about comfort stations involving Dutch women. Records were sealed to protect the women's honor, a decision that would delay justice and recognition for decades. When Allied medical teams examined liberated comfort women, they documented catastrophic health consequences. According to U.S. Office of War Information Report Number 49, physical examinations revealed widespread malnutrition comparable to other PS who experienced average losses of 32% of body weight. Sexually transmitted diseases were endemic. Military medical reports documented high rates of syphilis and gonorrhea, often inadequately treated with toxic substances like Salvon, Aranomony, causing sterility and other serious side effects. Medical teams documented evidence of forced abortions, sterilization procedures, and severe reproductive damage from repeated sexual assault. The medical records revealed systematic brutality. Women presented with severe malnutrition, weights of 60 to 70 pounds for those whose normal weight should have been 100 to 120. Diseases of nutritional deficiency were common: scurvy, beriberi, pellagra, and quasi conditions typically seen in concentration camps. Military medical personnel provided initial treatment using newly available sulfur drugs and penicillin, representing significant advancement over wartime care. However, specialized psychological support for sexual trauma remained virtually non-existent given the state of 1940 psychiatry. Medical personnel documented what they called hysteria, melancholia, and nervous exhaustion, terms that inadequately described what would later be recognized as severe post-traumatic stress disorder. Military doctors' signatures appeared on forced abortion records, with one document from a Philippine station showing 15 forced abortions performed in a single month. Sterilization procedures were documented at multiple locations. The medical records revealed that comfort women were viewed not as patients requiring care, but as military equipment requiring maintenance. The U.S. Army's 164th Signal Photo Company provided crucial visual documentation beyond. Signal Corps photographers systematically documented liberated comfort stations across the Pacific Theater, photographing the small cubicles where women were held, military-issue bedding, examination tables, and boxes of military condoms. These clinical photographs, intended for intelligence purposes, inadvertently created a visual record of systematic rape infrastructure. The images classified for decades showed the standardized nature of comfort stations. Whether in the Philippines, Burma, or Pacific Islands, the facilities followed similar patterns, converted buildings divided into small rooms, each barely large enough for a military cot with communal washing facilities and medical examination rooms. The military precision of these stuff was evident in every photograph. The photographers documented not just facilities but the women themselves at liberation. Their images showed severe malnutrition, untreated injuries, and the thousand-year stare of severe trauma. These photographs, while respecting the women's dignity as much as possible under the circumstances, provided irrefutable visual evidence of systematic abuse. The United Nations Relief and Rehabilitation Administration, UNRWA, established in November 1943, managed the massive repatriation effort. With 11,000 staff by 1946, UNRWA operated hundreds of displaced persons camps across former occupied territories. Between May and June 1945 alone, the Supreme Headquarters Allied Expeditionary Force, SHF, repatriated 5.25 million displaced persons at a rate of 80,000 per day. However, comfort women were processed within general civilian populations without specialized care. Their ambiguous status, neither prisoners of war, civilian internees, nor military personnel, affected everything from medical care to transportation priority. This bureaucratic limbo meant many women received only minimal assistance despite their severe trauma. Many women couldn't or wouldn't return home. The research documents specific cases. Bibengi remained in Okinawa after liberation, classified as a stateless Korean under U.S. military rule, later becoming an illegal alien when Okinawa returned to Japan in 1972. Korean women in China lost their native language over decades of isolation. Some married locally for protection and survival. The American Red Cross, with 7.5 million volunteers and 39,000 paid staff at peak in 1945, provided comfort items and non-medical support through programs like the Gray Ladies, who offered psychological first aid to displaced persons. However, language barriers and cultural differences limited effectiveness. The focus remained on rapid repatriation rather than addressing trauma. Cultural stigma presented insurmountable barriers. In Confucian societies, female chastity was paramount to family honor. Women who had been raped brought perceived shame to families. Many families preferred to believe daughters had died rather than accept they had been comfort women. Catholic Philippines presented similar challenges, with sexual abuse victims facing social ostracism. Indonesian Muslim communities struggled to accept women who had been forcibly defiled. The International Military Tribunal for the Far East's handling of comfort women represents a profound failure of post-war justice. Despite proceedings from April 29, 1946 to November 12, 1948, with 419 witnesses and 4,136 exhibits, the tribunal made only one direct reference to forced prostitution in its judgment. This concerned the Chinese city of Guilin, where Japanese forces recruited women labor on the pretext of establishing factories, and forced the women thus recruited into prostitution. The crucial legal precedent came instead from the Dutch Batavia Temporary Court-Martial, which conducted 4 of 171 cases specifically on forced prostitution between August 1946 and December 1949, the Semarang Incident verdict. On February 14, 1948 saw Army Major Okada sentenced to death and 11 others receiving 2 to 20 year sentences for forcing approximately 35 Dutch women from concentration camps into comfort stations. Documents discovered in April 2007 by researchers Yoshimi Yoshiaki and Hiyapumi Hayashi revealed the Tokyo Trials archives contained 7 official documents showing Toket Thai Naval Military Police forced women into frontline brothel in China, Indochina, and Indonesia. These documents had been available but unprosecuted for 60 years. The failure to prosecute these crimes sent a clear message that sexual slavery wasn't considered significant. This decision would haunt survivors for decades, denying them recognition and justice while perpetrators went free. For 46 years after liberation, comfort women remained silent. Then on August 14, 1991, Kim Hak-soon became the first woman to publicly identify herself as a former comfort woman. Her press conference opened the door for survivors across Asia to speak out. Though her specific liberation details remain less documented in available records, her courage in speaking triggered a wave of testimonies that would validate the documentary evidence American forces had gathered decades earlier. In January 1992, historian Yoshimi Yoshiaki made a discovery at Japan's defense agency's National Institute of Defense Studies archives that would transform understanding of the comfort women system. He found documents that provided the first documented evidence of direct Japanese military involvement, including military orders for establishing comfort stations and regulations showing direct military control and supervision. The Shanghai Expeditionary Force Diary from 1932 contained Senior Staff Officer Okabe Naosaburu's entry describing establishment of the first comfort station during the Shanghai incident. These discoveries proved what survivors had testified, but been disbelieved that the comfort women system was official military policy, not the actions of rogue units. Following Kim Hak-soon's testimony, other survivors began speaking. Yong-soo Lee, taken as a teenager from Korea, testified before the U.S. House of Representatives Foreign Relations Committee in 2007.
Her testimony, along with 2 other survivors, resulted in the passage of U.S. House Resolution 121, urging Japan to accept full responsibility for the comfort women system. Park Young-sim, the pregnant woman in the famous Sun Shan photograph, testified at the Women's International War Crimes Tribunal in Tokyo in 2000, finally putting a name and story to one of the war's most iconic images. She described being taken at age 17 and enduring 3 years of sexual slavery. In 2003, Chevy cited and identified the Nanjing Lix Comfort Station site where she had been enslaved before being moved to Shan Ilchul Kang, forcibly taken to China in 1943, couldn't return to Korea after the war, and remained in China as a nurse until 2000. She visited the United States multiple times to promote awareness, and her painting, Girls Being Burnt, became the motif for the feature film Spirit's Homecoming. Her experience highlighted the long-term displacement caused by the comfort women system. The 1990s and 2000s saw explosive archival discoveries worldwide. American archives yielded declassified Signal Corps photographs showing comfort stations across the Pacific. Medical reports detailed systematic abuse. Intelligence documents revealed military infrastructure supporting sexual slavery. In 2014 to 2015, Chinese archives released over 90 documents from Kwanong Army Military Police Course archives in Guilin. These documents provided evidence of the Japanese Army as the funding agency for purchasing comfort women with detailed records. From puppet regime banks in Manchuria documenting payments for special personnel. Procurement Professor Su Jilang's research indicated that approximately 200,000 Chinese women alone had been forced into comfort stations, with 36% of all comfort women being Chinese. According to demographic analysis, the geographic spread of stations from Japan and China to the Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Thailand, Burma, New Guinea, Hong Kong, Macau, French Indochina, Korea, and Taiwan demonstrated the system's vast reach. The demographic breakdown revealed the system's racial hierarchy. 51.8%, 8% Korean, 36% Chinese, 12.2% Japanese with others including Filipino, Taiwanese, Indonesian, Burmese, Dutch, and Australian women. The systematic nature extended to military organization with high command issuing establishment orders, regional staff officers creating operational plans, local military police providing oversight, and military doctors conducting regular examinations. Among the most chilling discoveries were disposal orders found at several locations. These documents issued as Allied forces approached, ordered the special disposal of comfort women to prevent their capture and testimony. Multiple massacre sites discovered in the Philippines and elsewhere confirmed these orders were carried out at Mapaniki village in the Philippines. The November 23, 1944 incident involved Japanese forces attempting to eliminate comfort women before American forces arrived. Similar incidents were documented across the Pacific as Japanese forces retreated. The high mortality rate among comfort women, estimated at 75% by historians, reflected not just harsh conditions, but deliberate killing to prevent testimony. These disposal orders represented the Japanese military's recognition that comfort women were witnesses to war crimes. The systematic attempt to eliminate them before Allied liberation demonstrated consciousness of guilt and the lengths to which Japanese forces would go to prevent exposure of the comfort women system. Japanese propaganda significantly affected liberation efforts. Women had been told Americans would torture and cannibalize them. British accounts from Burma reported Korean comfort women were astonished to learn that the British were not going to eat them. This terror deliberately instilled by Japanese forces made initial liberation contacts difficult and dangerous. The propaganda served dual purposes: preventing escape during captivity and encouraging suicide rather than capture. Multiple reports documented women given grenades with instructions to kill themselves rather than be taken by Americans. This psychological warfare continued affecting women long after physical liberation. The effectiveness of this propaganda revealed itself in liberation operations across the Pacific. Women hid from liberating forces, attempted suicide, or remained in comfort stations even after Japanese forces fled. The psychological conditioning was so complete that many women couldn't initially comprehend that Allied forces intended to help rather than harm them. As occupation forces spread across Japan in late 1945, they discovered evidence that the comfort women system extended into the home islands. Military authorities found documentation of comfort stations operating within Japan, serving training bases and military installations. More disturbing was the discovery that Japanese authorities had prepared similar facilities for occupation forces. The Recreation and Amusement Association, established before American forces arrived, had recruited thousands of Japanese women as special entertainers. General MacArthur's immediate ban reflected both moral objections and public health concerns, though enforcement varied. Navy documentation showed the Japanese military had maintained detailed statistics on comfort women throughout the war. This documents quickly classified revealed the massive scale of the system, the bureaucratic precision, registration forms, medical inspection schedules, financial records demonstrated that sexual slavery was integrated into military operations at every level. One of the most significant gaps in the historical record is the absence of detailed first-hand accounts from American soldiers who liberated comfort women. The Library of Congress Veterans, History Project, National World War II Museum collections, and military historical records reveal minimal documentation from liberating soldiers' perspectives. Several factors explain this absence. Japanese military records were systematically destroyed at war's end. The comfort women issue remained taboo for decades after 1945. American military documentation prioritized tactical operations over social encounters, and many comfort women died during the war or were killed by retreating. Japanese forces before liberation could occur, though silence from American military personnel reflected both the shocking nature of the discoveries and the lack of framework for understanding systematic sexual slavery. The military had protocols for liberating PSWs and civilian internees, but no procedures for handling victims of organized rape. This institutional gap contributed to the decades-long invisibility of comfort women's experiences. From 1945 to 1991, comfort women remained history's hidden victims. Government compensation went to recognized PWS and civilian internees, but comfort women, unclassified and unacknowledged, received nothing. The silence was maintained by all parties. The Japanese government destroyed records and denied responsibility. Allied governments classified documents and avoided embarrassing questions. Asian governments focused on development over advocacy for victims. The breakthrough came through survivors' courage. Following Kim Ha-kun's 1991 testimony, the Women's International War Crimes Tribunal in 2000 provided a forum for 64 survivors from 8 countries to finally provide formal legal testimony. Though lacking legal authority, that tribunal created a comprehensive record of testimony that validated decades of hidden suffering. U.S. House Resolution 121 passed in 2007 officially recognized comfort women's suffering, urging Japan to formally acknowledge, apologize, and accept historical responsibility in a clear and unequivocal manner for its military's coercion of women into sexual slavery. This recognition, coming 62 years after liberation, demonstrated how long the journey from rescue to acknowledgement had been. Modern retrospective studies of comfort women survivors show 90% lifetime prevalence of PTSD, with 65% showing current symptoms decades later, rates significantly higher than Holocaust survivors. At 39% prevalence, these statistics validate the severe psychological trauma documented, but poorly understood by military medical personnel in 1945. The systematic nature of the comfort women system is revealed in its scope. Operations from 1932 to 1945 across territories, spanning the entire Japanese Empire. Standardized regulations replicated across thousands of facilities. Military logistics involving transportation, medical services, and financial management, and racial hierarchies embedded in operational procedures. The numbers tell a story of industrial-scale sexual slavery, implemented with military precision and bureaucratic efficiency. The very comprehensiveness of the system, its documentation, standardization, and scale, became the evidence that would eventually prove its existence despite decades of denial. The evidence survived despite attempts at destruction and denial. Military translators' reports, signal corps photographs, medical records, and intelligence documents created an archive that couldn't be eliminated. When survivors finally spoke, their testimonies matched records buried in classified files, providing verification that transformed hidden history into acknowledged truth. Every captured regulation, every photographed comfort station, every translated document contributed to building an undeniable case. The bureaucratic precision that Japanese military applied to sexual slavery became evidence of systematic war crimes. The very documents meant to organize exploitation became proof of atrocity. The American soldiers who discovered comfort stations probably never imagined their routine documentation would become crucial evidence in a decades-long fight for truth. Their photographs, reports, and translations created an archive that survived attempts at denial and forgetting. What seemed like routine military documentation became historical evidence that demands acknowledgement. As of 2024, fewer than 20 Korean comfort women survivors remained alive.